Yeah. Dr. Christopher West. So in relation with that, um, like this call of how we're supposed to live out marriage, it's also to image divine love. Now, when it comes to the contraception, I mean that's also an issue that we have today.
Every question of sexual morality, when we understand the theology of our bodies, every question of sexual morality comes down to one simple question. Does this act truly image God's free, total, faithful, fruitful love, or does it miss the mark? Now, why am I doing this with my hands? It's like an archer, right? The
Mm,
very word
mm,
sin is an archer's term. When the archer pulls back his arrow and he misses the target, he has sinned.
mm.
That's what we do when we sin. The target is to love freely, totally, faithfully, and fruitfully. So let's just ask a couple questions here, right?
Mm.
Let's do the math. But before we do that, I always say to my students, never look at sin in your life without holding the hands of mercy. Got
Mm.
to hold Jesus's hand and Mary's hand. Never, never look at sin without holding the hands of mercy. Because if we do that, if we look at our sin without holding the hands of mercy, we're either going to rationalize our sin away and say that's not a sin, or we're going to despair, right? So are you guys holding the hands of mercy?
Yeah.
Should. We should.
Yes.
Yes, we
I
need
want
it.
all the
We
listeners
need
out
it.
there also hold the hands of mercy before we take a look at this.
Okay,
So here we
everyone.
go. Hold those hands of mercy. And when you're holding the hands of mercy, don't be afraid to admit a million sins here. Don't be afraid if you're guilty of every one of these sins. Be afraid of only one sin, the refusal to admit sin,
Mm.
right? The rationalization of sin. We should lean in the direction of saying, okay, I have sinned, rather than saying that's not a sin. Because
Mm.
rationalizing sin away is the only unforgivable sin,
Mm.
right? If we don't repent of our sin, we can't be forgiven. So
So,
don't rationalize it away. Trust in God's mercy and trust in his grace to help you adjust your aim, right?
mm.
If your aim is off, the solution is not to change the target, but to adjust your aim.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yes, nicely said.
Okay, so let's do the math now. Let's add it up. I'm going to ask some questions and I want the two of you
Okay.
to answer.
Okay.
Does an act of masturbation image God's free, total, faithful, fruitful love, or does it miss the mark?
It it missed the mark,
It
definitely.
misses the mark, right?
Yeah.
That's just simple math.
Mm.
Are we saying this to condemn anybody or scold anybody? No, not at all.
No.
We're saying it to come into the light so that the light can save us from the darkness, right? So let's keep going here.
Mm. Okay.
Does an act of premarital sex image God's free, total, faithful, fruitful love, or does it miss the mark?
It misses the mark.
Misses the mark.
Yeah.
It makes sense that if sex is meant to be a renewal of wedding vows, that's exactly what you commit to at the altar, to love freely, totally, faithfully, and fruitfully. If you haven't exchanged wedding vows, you cannot
Uh-huh.
honestly have sex because
Mhm.
you'd be saying something with your body that isn't true, right? You'd be lying with your body.
Mm.
That's the problem with sexual immorality. It's a lie. But let's keep going with this. Is an act of adultery, does that image God's free, total, faithful, fruitful love, or does it miss the mark?
Another miss.
Definitely. Yeah.
It misses the
Misses the
mark.
mark. Mm.
Does looking at pornography image God's free, total, faithful, fruitful love, or does it miss the mark?
Definitely misses the mark.
Definitely misses the mark. Does homosexual activity image God's free, total, faithful, fruitful love, or does it miss the mark?
It does. Yeah. It does miss the mark.
It misses the mark. And then we got to get to this one. Does an intentionally sterilized act of intercourse image God's free, total, faithful, fruitful love, or does it miss the mark?
Misses the mark.
It misses the mark.
Yeah.
maybe the Catholic Church isn't crazy here. I want to propose to all of the listeners that the original gender confusion, the original attack against gender, is precisely the attempt to render our genitals unable to generate.
Mm.
And when we render our genitals unable to generate, we are attempting to erase the fundamental meaning of gender. Remember, what does gender mean? It's the manner in which you generate new life.
Mm.
When we view the world through condom-colored glasses, it's only a matter of time before the meaning of gender disappears. We no longer see it. And that's the world we live in now.
Hi, this is Aruga of the Aruga Show. If you like what you just saw, please consider subscribing and smash that like button. We'll need all of your help to take back the culture from this ideological colonization of the West. Thank you.